I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I never thought I'd be that guy, someone who gets completely blindsided by the woman he married. We'd been together for 5 years and I thought we knew everything about each other. She was supposed to be my partner, my best friend. I trusted her more than anyone. We'd just come back from our honeymoon. It was supposed to be perfect. A week in the Bahamas, beaches, cocktails, the whole fairy tale thing. I remember standing at the airport clutching her hand, feeling like the luckiest guy alive. I had no idea that just a few days later my world would shatter. It started with a text, just a random message from an unknown number that read, "You should know what she's been doing. She's been lying to you." I thought it was some kind of sick joke at first. Who even knew I had that kind of paranoia? But then I looked closer at the message. It wasn't a prank. It was real. The message had a photo attached, her on the night of our wedding, lips pressed against a man I'd never seen before. My stomach sank. My palms went cold and slick. That picture was enough to make my stomach twist like a knot. I stared at it, eyes burning, trying to process what I was seeing. The woman I married, the woman I just spent our first night as a married couple with cheating, during our honeymoon. On the night I thought she was sleeping peacefully beside me, I read the message again. "He's her boss. They've been cheating for months. Here's proof." I looked closer at the picture. It was grainy but clear enough. You could see her face, her eyes closed in pleasure. His hand was behind her head, pulling her close. The whole thing reeked of betrayal. I knew I was seeing something I'd never forget. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was stare. My stomach clenched and my heart hammered. I kept telling myself it was a lie. Maybe a setup, maybe a prank. But deep down, I knew better. My wife, the woman I loved, had been doing this behind my back, while I was planning to spend my first night as a married man with her. I felt numb for a long moment. Then rage started boiling. I did cry, not then. I just folded the phone in my hand, feeling a cold sweat bead on my forehead. I looked around, trying to find some sense of calm, but all I saw was a blur. The airport was so loud, people rushing past, announcements blaring, but nothing registered. It was like the whole world had gone silent just for that moment. I wanted to call her. I wanted to ask her what the hell was going on, but I didn't dare. Instead, I just stared at the picture again, feeling a dark emptiness creeping into my chest. I knew there was no way this was just a mistake. No way she could deny it. The evidence was clear. And I was left standing there, heart pounding, with the sick realization that everything I thought was real was just a lie. I didn't know how I was supposed to act now. How do you confront someone who's betrayed you this badly? How do you even begin to process the fact that your entire marriage was a lie? I slipped my phone into my pocket, trying to gather myself. I had to keep it together, at least until I figured out what to do next, but every step I took away from the airport felt heavier. The flight home loomed, and with it, the inevitable confrontation I'd been dreading. I remember thinking, I'd spent years building trust and now it was all gone, just like that. It was like watching a house of cards get knocked down by a gust of wind I didn't see coming. And I knew that from this moment on, everything would change. I just didn't know if I'd be able to survive the fallout. The flight home was a blur. I sat in my seat, staring out the window, watching the clouds drift by. My mind kept replaying that damn picture, that moment when I realized she'd been lying to me all along. It was like a punch to my gut every time I thought about it. I kept running my fingers over my palm, trying to hold onto some sense of calm, but my hands kept trembling. The worst part was the silence inside my head. No matter how many thoughts swirled around, I couldn't find a single piece of comfort. My stomach churned, and I kept feeling that sick, hollow feeling deep in my chest. The kind of pain that makes your teeth ache and your eyes water but leaves you speechless. I kept asking myself what I'd done wrong, whether I'd missed the signs or if she'd been pretending all along. When I finally got home, everything looked normal. Her clothes folded neatly, the house clean, the usual hum of the refrigerator. But none of that mattered. I didn't want to believe she was capable of betraying me like this. Still, I had the message, the proof, and no matter how much I wanted to deny it, I knew it was true. She was sitting on the couch when I walked in. Her face lit up when she saw me, but I saw right through that fake smile. My stomach twisted again. I didn't even get a chance to speak before she asked, "Hey, you're home early. How was the flight?" I looked at her, cold and quiet. I felt like I had been turned to stone. Once I would have answered her calmly. Now all I wanted was to tear her apart with words, but I didn't. I just crossed my arms and said, "We need to talk." My voice was steady, cold enough to make her flinch. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Okay," she said softly, almost like she knew what was coming. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, showing her the picture. Her face paled instantly. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, she just looked down, guilt and panic flashing across her eyes. That moment, I saw who she really was, stripped of all her lies. It was a brutal sight. "Was this just a one-time thing?" I asked, voice hoarse but controlled. "Or has this been going on for months?" She looked away, trembling. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. Don't." I cut her off. "I don't want your excuses. I want to know how you could do this, how you could lie to me for so long. During our honeymoon, while I was trusting you, you were with him." My voice cracked and my fists clenched. "Do you even understand what you've done to us?" She looked at me with tears streaming down her face, but I felt nothing but anger. I was sick of her crying. I was sick of feeling betrayed. I realized then that I couldn't just let this slide. I had to do something. I had to be smart. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. The picture haunted me, and I knew I couldn't just confront her and leave it at that. I needed a plan. A way to make her feel what I felt, to show her I wouldn't be a pushover anymore. By morning, I'd come up with a plan. I'd gather evidence, play my cards carefully. I knew I couldn't go in blind. I'd wait, watch, and then strike. And when I was ready, I'd make sure she'd regret ever crossing me. But first, I had to decide what my move would be. The question was, how deep could I go? And what kind of revenge would make her pay the price she deserved? That day, I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind was a mess of anger, betrayal, and cold calculation. I knew I had to play this carefully. I couldn't afford to tip her off before I had everything in place. So I started by digging through her phone. I knew it was sneaky, but I needed to know if there was more pictures, messages, anything I could use. When I finally got her phone unlocked, she always kept a pattern, but I'd gotten good at guessing. I found the messages first. It was like opening a door to a secret world. There were dozens of texts between her and him, dozens of late-night conversations, plans, apologies, flirtations. Nothing outright explicit, but enough to tell me the affair was ongoing, serious, and maybe even more than I'd initially thought. I also found a folder in her photos, hidden in a part of her cloud storage she thought no one knew about. Inside, there were pictures from different nights out, dates, and most damningly, some selfies she'd taken with him, smiling and carefree. The kind of photos that make your stomach turn when you realize your wife had been hiding a secret life. My hands trembled as I scrolled through. I kept telling myself I wasn't going to lose control, but the rage bubbled up. I wanted to crush her, to make her feel every ounce of pain she'd given me. I didn't want her to think she could get away with this. I had to be smart about what I did next. I set up a voice recorder in the house, just in case she slipped up. I also snapped some screenshots of the messages, just to make sure I had irrefutable proof. I knew I'd need more than just her words and pictures, something that would really hit her hard, make her realize I wasn't going to be another sucker. Over the next few days, I watched her. She acted innocent, but I saw signs of guilt, avoiding my eyes, being clingy at times, trying to act normal, but I knew better. I was gathering ammunition, and I was getting close to understanding how deep this went. One night I confronted her just to see her crack. I sat her down, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, "Tell me everything you've been doing. I want the truth. No more lies." Her hands shook as she looked at me, tears in her eyes. She stammered, tried to deny it, but I was ready. I threw the evidence on the table, screenshots of the messages, the photos, the recordings I'd made. Her face went pale. She didn't have anything to say. That was the final nail in the coffin. I knew then that I had enough to destroy her if I wanted, but I didn't just want to destroy her. I wanted to make her suffer in a way that mattered. I wanted her to feel vulnerable, to see what it was like to be betrayed. That was when I started planning my revenge. I knew the first step was to make her feel exposed. I decided to set a trap, one that would make her realize that I had all the power now and that her secrets were no longer safe. I wanted her to see that I wasn't the naive husband she thought I was. I had become something else, something dangerous. My plan was simple but calculated. I'd send the evidence to her boss, make him realize she'd been cheating on him too. I'd leak some of the messages to her friends, make her feel humiliated. And then I'd confront her directly with everything in my hands and demand she leave. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without paying the price. As I organized everything, I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This was it. I was about to turn her betrayal around, make her see that I was no longer the fool she thought I was. And when I finally did confront her, I'd make sure she knew exactly how much she'd lost. That was my promise to myself. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more pretending I didn't know. I was going to make her regret ever crossing me. The night I finally put my plan into motion, my hands were slick with sweat. I sat in front of my laptop, carefully typing out everything I was about to send. The messages, the photos, the recordings. I organized it all into a single, airtight package. I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about ending this betrayal once and for all. First, I sent the evidence to her boss. I included a message that read, "Thought you should know what she's been doing behind your back. Maybe this will help you decide what you want to do." I kept it cold and straightforward, no extra emotion, just facts. I knew how powerfully this could hit him, exposing her at her most vulnerable. Next, I fired off a few anonymous texts to her closest friends, hinting at her secret life. I didn't send everything, just enough to make her friends doubt her, to put her under pressure. I wanted her to feel exposed, isolated even. I watched her face as she read the messages, her eyes darting back and forth, her face draining of color. She froze when I handed her my phone and said, "You might want to see this." Her fingers trembled as she opened the messages from her boss. Her eyes widened in horror. This isn't true," she whispered, voice trembling, but I knew better. I had her dead to rights. "Don't bother denying it now," I said, voice cold. "I've got everything. The proof, the recordings, the messages. I'm not stupid. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. You thought you could keep this secret forever, didn't you?" She sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. "I was stupid. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, just listen." "Save it," I cut her off. "You made your choice, and now you're going to face the consequences." That's when I handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a simple letter, my goodbye, my ultimatum. I told her I was done, that I never wanted to see her again, and that I was taking everything I could from her. The house, the savings, everything. I wasn't going to let her destroy me, but I would destroy her if I had to. She looked at me, eyes red and swollen. "You're going to leave me like this," she choked out. "I'm leaving you because I deserve better," I said, "and because I won't let someone like you get away with this. You betrayed the trust we built over years, and I'll make sure you feel the pain you caused me." I grabbed my coat and keys, feeling the weight of each step. The house suddenly felt colder, emptier. I placed the keys on the table, looked back at her and said, "You want to know what I think? You're lucky I'm a decent person. But that doesn't mean I won't make you regret this. You're going to lose everything, your job, your reputation, maybe your friends. And I'll be watching, waiting for the moment you realize what you've thrown away." She whispered, "Please don't do this," but I didn't answer. I just walked out, closing the door behind me. That moment, I felt like I was closing a chapter I'd never get back. I knew I'd never forget what she did, but I also knew I couldn't stay anymore. As I stepped into my car, I took a deep breath. It wasn't the ending I imagined, but I told myself it was a new beginning. A fresh start without her betrayal hanging over me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to unravel even further, that the fallout was only just beginning. And I was ready for it. The days that followed were like a storm I couldn't escape. News started spreading, first from her boss. He called her out at work and she was sent home on leave. The whispers grew louder and I could see the damage spreading. Her reputation was crumbling and I didn't care. Honestly, I hadn't even expected her to keep her job, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I'd made her face the consequences. I stayed silent initially, letting her scramble and try to spin her lies. But every time I saw her face haunted by guilt, I felt that bitter satisfaction. I'd already told her she'd lose everything, now I watched it happen. She was trying to contact me, begging for forgiveness, promising it was a mistake. I didn't answer her calls, didn't read her messages. I knew better than to fall for that crap again. One evening, she showed up at the house, tears streaming down her cheeks, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She begged, literally begged, to talk, to explain, to fix this. I stood at the door with my arms crossed, cold enough to make her freeze in place. "I'm not interested," I said flatly. "You lied to me for months. You betrayed everything we had. I don't want to hear your apologies. I want you to leave." She looked desperate. "Please, just hear me out. I know I messed up, but I love you. Love." I cut her off sharply. "You don't even know what that means anymore. You threw everything away and now you want to play the victim." She sank to her knees, crying, but I didn't budge. I felt the familiar surge of anger, but I kept it in check. This was about showing her I was done playing nice, that I was done being the fool she thought I was. I turned my back and walked inside, leaving her crying on the porch. That night, I started planning my final move. I knew I couldn't just let her drift away and forget about everything. She needed to see that her actions had consequences, that I was serious about cutting her out of my life. I decided to take control of her reputation and her future. I called my lawyer and scheduled a meeting. I also contacted a private investigator I'd hired to gather more dirt, just in case. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw at me next, but I also wanted her to understand that I was serious about ending this once and for all. The next morning, I sent her a final message. "It's over. You've lost me, everything. Don't try to contact me again. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it won't be with me anymore." That was the last thing I said. I handed over the keys, packed up a few essentials, and left her standing in a house that I was about to completely take back. I knew I was crossing a line, but at that point I didn't see any other way. She'd pushed me to the edge and I was done being her victim. As I walked out the door, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The betrayal had cut deep, but I'd taken back the power. Still, I wondered, would she try to come back? Would she fight to hold on to whatever was left? Or was this really the end? All I knew was that I was finally free. And for the first time in a long while, I could breathe without that gnawing fear in my chest. I was finally moving on from her lies, her betrayal, and the nightmare that had taken over my life. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my dignity, my peace, and my future. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking through fog. Leaving her behind was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but somehow it was also what I needed. No more lies, no more betrayal. I had finally taken control, and I refused to let her drag me down into that darkness again. I filed for divorce, got a restraining order, and made damn sure she understood she wasn't getting any second chances. I handed over the keys, packed my bags, and started rebuilding my life from scratch. It wasn't easy. Every day was a reminder of what I'd lost, but I knew I was better off without her. Looking back, I realize how much that betrayal changed me. I've become more cautious, more guarded. But I also learned something vital. Sometimes the only way to heal is to confront what's broken head-on, no matter how painful it is. I don't regret what I did because I took back my dignity. I refuse to be a victim of her lies anymore. Now I focus on myself. I've started therapy, reconnected with friends I'd pushed away, and most importantly, I've learned to trust myself again. The pain will always be there, but it's less raw now. I can breathe without feeling like I'm suffocating. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Betrayal cuts deep, but it can also be a catalyst for change. Be smart, be ruthless, and don't let anyone steal your peace. Because at the end of the day, no one else is going to fight for you like you fight for yourself. I walk forward now with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. Whatever comes next, I know I'll be ready. And that's the real victory.